Let's go back to you.
Well, I have another viewer question, and it is about daylilies. She has wild daylilies mixed in with her hybrid daylilies, and she'd like to eliminate the wild daylilies. And you could dig them out, of course, but you have to make sure you went down and followed the base so you actually had the right roots and stuff that you were taking out. I heard this from some master gardeners, and I'm going to steal the term, about the garden glove of death, and you put your Roundup on the glove and just wipe the leaves. So you have a rubber glove with a cloth glove over it. I prefer using one of those foam sponges, and then I paint the plant that I know I want to kill, and I direct exactly where the control is going to happen. And that's probably one of the easier ways, because then you'll know exactly which plant you have and you're not disturbing your whole bed. But if they're that thick, disturbing the bed may help, because they probably need thinned out anyway. So it's either digging or some very selective, very directed spray.
Very good. Thank you, Teresa. And with that, we're going to go to Rusty next.
All right, thanks, Diane. So we have Felix, who wrote in about some problems he's having with lemon balm invading his lawn. Lemon balm actually is, if this time of year, might be very good to have around because of all the mosquitoes. It does have some mosquito repellent capacity there, but he's having trouble getting rid of it, and I've sort of talking a little bit before the show, and I wonder whether or not it's actually lemon balm. It may be another weed called creeping Charlie. Either way, if it is lemon balm, we are approaching sort of the ideal time to kill many broadleaf weeds into September, as long as the ground is moist before leaf drops on the trees. Typically, some of your harder to control weeds are best controlled with your broadleaf weed control products in sort of the end of September, 1st of October. Some of the really hard to control stuff like the creeping Charlie or wild violets, a product that has an active ingredient of triclopyr in it will do the best job. A three-way mix for the lemon balm should do the trick. He's saying he's having a hard time even using Roundup to get it to work. Be careful using Roundup in your turf. It's an excellent tool in the garden, but in your turf you're going to wind up with dead spots. The other thing is, if most of the labels are going to tell you to apply it 2 days after you've cut the lawn and 2 days before you cut the lawn, so that way you have enough leaf tissue to absorb the chemical and kill the plant, and it kind of works best that way. So those would be the tips, but any of your lawn weed problems you're having, you're going right into that session. The one word of caution that I would have, if you took my earlier advice about overseeding, you want to really be careful, read the label carefully on that. You don't want to overseed and 2 weeks later come back and spray. You'll kill all your new grass, and then you're going to be really unhappy with me, maybe yourself, and your wife's not going to be happy with you, and it's just not a good deal.
I can't believe they'd be unhappy with you.
They
just needed to be thorough in their listening, because you gave them good advice. And we're here to give good and timely advice. Thank you, Rusty, for that. Sandy, what are you going to talk to us about?
Well, I tell you, this is that great time of year where we start seeing lots of insects and stuff in there that we're not necessarily familiar with. And this actually, one of our master natches brought in this particular insect. This is actually a sphinx moth, and it's a Carolina sphinx moth. And you can see it's really a very large moth. And people might notice these from time to time because they often will, oops, there's going to slide off. You'll often see them at dusk, and they have a very long proboscis, and that they put into like tubular flowers, things like petunias and stuff, and you'll see them right at dusk, and they kind of flutter almost like a hummingbird. And so people often think there's some kind of little hummingbird or something like that. And so they're really a fabulous moth. I really enjoy watching them. I love seeing them. Of course, the other part to this is it is tobacco horn. Their caterpillar is actually the tobacco hornworm, and that happens to be the caterpillar that can really, do a number on your tomato plants. So it is really one of those things that we have to realize that if you want, beautiful moths like this, tobacco hornworm's got to be out there somewhere. So one would hope that maybe someone would maybe plant a few extra tomato plants that they don't care about, so that we could get these moths, because they really are fun to watch and great to see at dusk time. So it is one of those things that's out there. And I also want to remind people that we have a great institution that's affiliated with the University of Illinois called the Prairie Research Institute, and they have fabulous publications that people may not be familiar with. And they have one there on the sphinx sphinx moths of Illinois, and who knew that there were this many sphinx moths in Illinois? So this is a great identification type of book. Gives you all kinds of information on, where they're going to be, what the caterpillars are like, those kind of things. And then also they have a new-ish book called The Butterflies of Illinois, and these are both great resources when it comes to what you're going to see in Illinois, and great identification books. And I think they're really fun even for kids to sort of get more familiar with the types of insects that are out there. So these are through the Prairie Research Institute. You can just go to their website and you can shop and get some great books.
Excellent. Boy, that's good information right there.
Sure.
All right, well, let's see what the the next ones, have for us for questions. And so let's go to Jerry's question. He's on line 4 about irises. Hi, Jerry.
Hi. Do I need to shut off my television?
Or somehow just not listen to it. You can go ahead and just chat right to us.
Okay, well, that'll be fine then. My question had to do with I'm not a real educated gardener.
We are here for you.
I believe this is at least a relative good time to dig iris and replant them, but they haven't been dug up for 5 or 6 years, so when I dig them up, am I supposed to cut off part of the iris, and am I supposed to then dip it into something? I've had people tell me maybe I need to dip the bulbs into something, water or whatever, before I replant them.
Who would like to tackle that? And we probably all could, but
I'll start. You guys can chime in.
Sure.
We can all chime in at some time. So it really is one of those things that we're talking about, the rhizomaceous type of irises that have those big rhizomes, is probably what you're talking about, the big bearded irises. And those actually can really be divided even in July and August. So we're really to the point where there are the few perennials that we actually can divide them, or would divide them normally when it's hot and dry. But it hasn't really been dry so much. So probably what they're thinking of when it talks about dipping, I don't typically do that, but sometimes people do. Once they divide them, they actually dip them in like a very weak bleach solution, because the big thing with those rhizomes is that they can rot sometimes. So I think sometimes people do that. I don't necessarily do that. The big thing with the big bearded irises with those rhizomes is that fan of leaves, when it flowers, that particular fan only flowers once. And so that's the part. So if it has an old flower stalk on it, that's the one that you're going to cut off, break off, or whatever, and throw that in the compost pile, because it's not going to flower again. And so it is one of those plants that really does need to be divided on a regular basis, because if you get too many of those rhizomes sort of hitting each other, eventually it just sort of stops flowering.
And 5 or 6 years is not
yeah,
bad at all.
that's actually not that bad. Although it's been if it's been a really vigorous one.
Yeah, they can grow out too, and you end up with a dead hole in the center.
Yeah. I have noticed I have some reblooming ones, because they do have some reblooming ones now, and I've noticed those really need to be divided almost like every 3 or 4 years. So it's really cool to have those rebloomers, because they'll actually start blooming right now in September. I have one called Immortality, which is a big white one, and it's just beautiful.
Good name.
But I've noticed it really sends off lots and lots of rhizomes, so it almost needs to be divided even more often than the typical one.
So Jerry, you can divide
go
right
for it.
now. Just make sure you have clean shears and get rid of any old stuff, but it is not too late, but I wouldn't wait.
Yeah.
And don't put them any deeper than they were.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. Yeah,
exactly.
don't put
You
'em
should see that up on top.
Yep.
And you can cut the leaves back and make it a shorter fan so they don't flop over. But yeah, get out there with a flashlight tonight. Or maybe wait till tomorrow. But anyway, it is not too late, but do it now.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that question. Let's go to Sharon's question. Great, it's about daylilies. Hi, Sharon, on line 6.
Hi, you guys are a hoot.
When we know each other, we
have
can
fun.
really have fun.
I know where the tomato hornworm comes from. But
Yep.
I'll get to my question. I recently replanted daylilies evenly spaced in my vegetable garden, and I want to put manure down. But I heard that you don't want to fertilize your daylilies too much. So is that all right if I go ahead and put manure in there?
It is fall.
You're not going to hurt.
If it's
It
well
should be-
composted.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, because even a daylily does need some fertilization, and if it's a garden plot, it may be a little lacking in some of the fertilizer because of the vegetables that you've pulled out already. But yeah, if it's well composted, and if you're concerned, maybe keep it just a little further away, but I don't think you're going to hurt them at all.
If she was going to do that in May and June, we might say, oop, oop, oop,
Yeah.
but not right now. So you're actually side dressing is what you're doing.
Yeah, helping them out through the winter.
Exactly. Well, very good question. That's good for everyone or anything besides just daylilies. All right, let's go to Kathy's question on line 5 about maples. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, thank you for taking my question.
You're welcome.
In '09, we planted a Japanese maple, and it's really getting out of hand. And I was wanting to know what month we should trim it in and how far back.
Okay, Rusty, take it away.
So Japanese maples are beautiful trees. And there's 2 different types. You have the cut leaf varieties, which tend to be more spreading and very low, and then you have some more of the upright with the full leaves, and those can get to be 20, 25 feet tall. One thing I would encourage you not to do is to shear it. I've seen that happen too many times, and so just as a general pruning practice, look to use because every gardener has them on at all times.
Show off.
You never know. But
Doesn't everybody?
pruning shears, loppers, or maybe even a handsaw to do some good horticultural pruning. Typically speaking, I would trim those in the spring of the year. I generally try to shy away from doing any pruning right now if possible. Every time you prune, you're encouraging new growth, and you don't really want to encourage growth whenever the first frost is not that far away. You can do it over the winter, and you should have fine. It may bleed a little bit, but it's not going to be a big deal. You can also do it in the summer. June would be fine to do it then as well.
And I would always encourage people, especially with trees like that, is that step back, make a cut, or have somebody with you, because next thing you know, especially with the shapes of Japanese maples, we want to maintain a nice, just a free-form shape typically. So just really sort of step back, or maybe a lot of times I even shake a branch and then have somebody like, what if I take this off? What's it going to look like?
Mm-hmm. It's a good tip, even with planting. Step back.
Yeah, step back, look at it.
Is it 3 feet from the house?
Yeah, does it make sense?
It should be much farther, but
you can't get them back on.
It's all about the light. The light penetrating the canopy. That's the ideal. You sort of thin it and don't just sort of reduce it. If you're planting a tree that wants to be 15, 20 feet tall, allow it to be that tall.
And let people see the shape of it if you thin it. Like magnolias, sometimes you can see those lower branches. It's really very
pretty. Many of the Japanese maples are pretty in that layered effect too.
And I think of Kusa dogwoods.
Same type of thing.
That have that horizontal feature to it. So
do a little research ahead of time.
Yeah. So anyway, we enjoyed that question, but don't shear anything.
No.
Don't top anything.
You heard it here.
Well, I'm going to go back over to Teresa and see what you are going to answer for a viewer.
It's a night for me with a lot of weed questions and stuff.
And there's more coming, it looks like.
Yeah. This viewer, Mary, had 2 weeds that just grew up fast and huge in her yard. And the first one, it's kind of discrepancy amongst the panelists here, whether it's the wild carrot or the poison hemlock. The only way you can really tell is if you could look at your actual stem and see if there's some purple spots. Poison hemlock is perennial and it is poison, so you do want to get rid of it. The wild carrot's a biennial, and it's a little easier to get rid of. You don't let it go to seed, but they're just weeds. You got to spray them or dig them up. The next one, the really big leaf one, is a burdock, and it has burrs on it. If you let it go to seed, that get tracked all around and keep spreading it. It's got don't let it go to seed. But I have burdock in my yard. I mow it off, and it comes back because there's so much seed left. That's the problem. So you got to stay diligent with these and not keep going after them.
I think if you would give it a new plant name, maybe you could sell it to someone, except it's such a big weed. But that one was really a pretty one. They should be proud of how pretty that weed looks.
It's the new hosta.
It's the new hosta. Oh my gosh.
It'll flower 3-4 feet though.
It's huge, but if it ever does go to seed, It's beyond. It's the new creeping Charlie. That looks like a hosta. Okay, well, good. Thank you for answering those weed questions. Hey, Rusty, what do you got?
Well, I was hoping to coax these little buggers awake, and